Hey everyone, this is our last week here in Brittany in France, in this little French countryside area on the Western Peninsula. And what we got to do this week was probably one of the most fun things that we did. If you were visiting this area, I'd highly recommend doing it. It was just kind of what I would describe as a perfect day. But we first started our week off by going on a little nature bath or a little forest hike, and that was just maybe 20 minutes from our area. And we were staying in the town of Goudelin or Goudelin. It's not too far from the main little city hub called Guingamp. And this was kind of a pretty common thing that we could do. Most all the areas around us would have a little river or a little stream. And when we first got there, we stopped and went to the picnic table and had a little bit of a lunch in preparation for a little nature walk. And pretty much all we did was walk along the stream. And we were constantly looking for I guess river otters are in this area. I'm not sure if that's true or if our son is just addicted to finding them. So we were on the lookout for river otters and some fish. And I guess what we enjoy a little bit more is looking at all the flora. And so we were spending time looking for the moss that was growing up on the sides of the trees and some of the lichen that was on these trees, looking at the ivy that was growing up, the mushrooms that were kind of growing around all the bases of the rotted trees. You could still see dew that was on the grass from that morning. And we just walked that maybe a half mile back and forth until we got to this little portion that went under this bridge that had these multiple dark tunnels that you could kind of walk along the side of. It kind of felt like Elf in when he's getting into walking into New York City. And that was a little bit kind of a dark path, but we walked through it and got to this other side that just was a little tiny nature walk through the forest, and it ended up being one little tiny lane road that went directly to this beautiful little house at the end of it, and there was no one else back there, no other homes, no other paths. So I don't know if this person uses that a lot to get to this little river. I'm sure they have an access road on the other side, but it was just a magical little spot. And then after we saw that house, we kind of walked back the path and back through the dark tunnel, got back to our little picnic table, and I just popped the drone up in the sky so that we could kind of look a little bit around the area and see just what the area looked like. It's kind of cool. You can see it just tucked around some other little farmland, and then there's just these trees that kind of pop up, which I think they call over here bois, B-O-I-S. So we'd every single day we'd say we're going to the boys, just because it sounded fun. But we got to see just the beautiful stream from the drone view. It's like it just makes everything more unique to be able to see it from that kind of vantage point, and just kind of see that you're in this little secluded countryside. And that's kind of a lot of how Brittany is. If you're coming to this area, you're looking to kind of get away from touristy things, get to small towns, see how people are just living their day-to-day life, and you get to experience nature and the farms and the people just way more authentically, and you're not surrounded by all the huge tourist things that are kind of in the bigger cities and the places that people go in France. So that was super nice. And then just a few days later, we got to do the thing that Emily was really looking forward to doing, and that was taking a ferry, which we took from, I believe it's called Le Croix. It's I'll look at my notes real quick. It's Larcouest, which I'll put some of this stuff in the description. Le Croix, I believe is how they pronounce it. And you take a little ferry, maybe 15 minutes or so, to the island of Ile-de-Brehat, which is Ile-de-Brehat. Ile-de-Brehat, I believe is how you pronounce it. And so you take that little ferry over, and then you have from around 10 a.m. or so until about 4:30 or 5 o'clock to just explore the island. There's a bunch of different little lighthouses that you can hike to, different beaches and bays. This area has a pretty significant tide difference. So we got off at one port, which was low tide, and then you see all the boats that are kind of high and dry. And then when we left, we ended up getting on at a completely different port, which was like, the water was another 10 feet or 20 feet high, which is pretty crazy how significant the tide can shift there. But it didn't take us very long as we're walking throughout the town to find the pretty much only bakery that we think is on that island. And we got a selection of some of our favorites, apple tarts and some twisted bread that has chocolate in it, pain au chocolat, all the things that can keep us going, energized for the whole day of walking. I think the full day we ended up walking about 6 or 7 kilometers, might have been 8, which is, anywhere between like 3 and 4 miles. So it's a pretty good day of walking, but you'll notice as you're walking throughout this beautiful island that there's no cars, I think, that are allowed on the island. So there's just people going around on their bikes with little carts attached to the back, or you can have tractors. So you'll see the little tractor signs that show that the people can only get around that way, or bike signs, and that's pretty much the only modes of transportation. So it's pretty cool because it's smaller roads, a little more quaint, and kind of feels a little untouched, as if you're kind of going back into like an older, way of living, which we really enjoyed a lot. As you go along these paths, you'll notice that all of them are lined with flowers, and there's green moss growing along all the stone rocks, and all the buildings are super cute, with really unique architecture to kind of how the French build their homes. And it was springtime, or coming up on springtime for us when we were there, so we were seeing tons of bees and pollinators and little flies going on all the flowers around us. So we did not hesitate to film them and get beautiful shots of all the flowers. And then our son had a really fun idea, which I didn't really think was going to work, which was to take one of the little flowers, I think it was the snowdrop flowers, and to hold it next to where the bumblebees were, to see if they would actually just go to our flower. And I didn't really know whether or not the flower that I had still had nectar in it or not, but I held it by a bee, and it actually ate from the flower. Unfortunately, the shot was not in focus, but it was still pretty cool to be able to show that to my son, and to be able to hold a little flower with a bee, getting nectar out of it. So that was pretty fun to do. As we kept on walking, we came up to this really old church that was there. I'm not entirely sure the age or how long it's been there for, but a lot of things on these islands were built several hundred years ago. And you could kind of tell it was a pretty quaint church, pretty simple in its design, not super articulate architecture, but the stained glass was really beautiful and a little less intricate, as I think some of the stained glass that you see in large cathedrals is. And so it was more simple and easier to kind of digest the message and the imagery, and just the beauty of the simple message that it was sharing. So a lot of that stained glass kind of caught our eye as we walked in, and the sun would hit it and kind of make the whole room different colors in different locations. Later throughout the day, this is probably what I would recommend more people to do, is to kind of walk to one of the tips or to the end locations where the lighthouses are. And if you go down to those bays, the one that we went to was really beautiful. It had a little tiny stone cottage for where the shepherds would often stay when they have their herds out in those grazing areas. And then there was this kind of green path, or bushy path, that went down to this beach that was full of these smooth stone rocks that were, anywhere from a golf ball to like a basketball size. And we just spent about 30 minutes there, just kind of throwing the rocks on each other and watching them bounce and flick off each other. Right behind us, there's this beautiful 3-stone cabin set up property that's just right there on the peninsula. Pretty stunning to see that place just kind of intact, and the isolation that it gets to experience was pretty breathtaking to see how kind of far out there they were. Not too long after that, we walked up these rocks, which was kind of a home to a bunch of seagulls or seabirds that were nesting on the sides. So we walked up to the top, and then you would see the seagulls kind of diving off the sides, and you could see their little nests with eggs down there. Didn't get a really good shot of the eggs because it was kind of sketchy to lean over and look, but we got to kind of hang around them for a little bit as they flew around, until we had to kind of start booking it back to the dock before the last boat was going to leave. I'd say that's probably the main thing to kind of keep track of while you're there, is that the boat has, I think it's every half hour or hour that it will be leaving. And we thought that when we got there, it was going to be leaving at 5 p.m., which would have been the second to last one. I think the last one is 6. But in reality, it actually leaves at like 4:40, or 20 minutes prior to its end destination, because its pickup time at the 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. block is in reference to the place that is on the mainland that you come out to the island from. So we had just gotten there at like 4:35, and we were the last people walking down, getting on, and then the boat pretty much took off at like 4:40 right after that. And then when we got there, we were back on the main island of France, and that's when the 5 o'clock departure is. So something to be mindful of if you go, just to kind of not get stuck on the island overnight if you're trying to wait out to the very last departure. But yeah, that was that day. It was kind of a perfect little day that we got to spend out there. There wasn't very many people going out, maybe 15, 20 people kind of coming in and out on the island. You could really easily just get isolated and do your own thing. All right, so that is pretty much our last week here in France. We're pretty sad to leave, and we'll be going to Belgium next, and we'll be showing you a little bit about kind of what Belgium was like and how it compares to France and our experience. We'll be there for a month. We do have one more video to put up, which is from a dairy farm with some of the best cheese that we've had, and really, really adorable cows. A lot of baby cows, because that's the season or the time of year that it is. So we're excited to share that with you. If you have any questions about the things that we did here in Brittany, please ask questions in the comments below. Give it a like if you enjoyed this. It means a lot to us. And consider subscribing and following along with what we're doing. We're just here to learn and to share positive things out into the world. And so we appreciate anyone who has watched to this point and is following along with the journey. Thanks.